I think it's really quite sad that I won't be able to show my children my homeland." That was the line that hung in the air. Not a scream. Not a threat. Not some wild royal bombshell. Just one quiet sentence from Prince Harry, spoken with the kind of weight that makes people stop scrolling and really listen. It did not sound like a man chasing drama. It sounded like a man who had been carrying too much for too long. And that is what made it hit harder. Because by now, people have heard every version of this story. The fairy tale. The rebellion. The exile. The betrayal. The brand. The breakdown. Depending on who is telling it, Harry and Meghan are either modern love story heroes or the authors of their own downfall. But on this particular occasion, the mood felt different. There he was in California, far from palace gates, far from balcony waves, far from the old world that once gave him a title and a script to follow. And still, somehow, Britain was right there in the room with him. In his voice. In that ache. In that one sentence about home. That is where this story really begins. Not with a screaming headline. Not with one more rumor tossed around online. With loss. Because what many people don't know is that the strangest part of the Harry and Meghan story is not just how public it has been. It is how much of it has been built out of silence. Every pause becomes a theory. Every private choice becomes a debate. Every missing detail gets filled in by strangers who swear they know what really happened. And when that starts happening, the truth gets crowded out fast. Today we are diving into the version beneath the noise. The human version. The version made of pressure, image, family hurt, media obsession, and years of people talking about two lives as if they were characters in a show instead of real people. Some parts are well documented. Some parts were inflated by gossip. Some were never proven at all. That matters. Because once a royal story gets loose in the world, it rarely stays small. Harry's recent words reopened everything. Old arguments. Old loyalties. Old anger. Old sympathy. People who had stopped paying attention leaned back in. People who had chosen sides years ago suddenly felt confirmed again. Supporters heard pain. Critics heard blame. And the internet, as always, heard opportunity. That is when the whispers started moving again. Not new whispers, really. Old ones? The kind that never fully die in royal circles. Stories about Meghan. Stories about control. Stories about family divides. Stories about what was true, what was staged, what was hidden, what was sold, and who changed after the cameras arrived. But this was never just one scandal. It was years of pressure collecting in the walls. The public had already watched Harry go from the cheeky younger prince to the angry spare, then to the husband who seemed ready to fight the whole institution for the woman he loved. People also watched Meghan go from Hollywood actress to duchess, then from duchess to one of the most picked-apart women on earth. That kind of attention changes the air around everything. A look becomes evidence. A pause becomes guilt. A statement becomes strategy. And the deeper this story went, the harder it became to tell where real life ended and projection began. Still, some moments cut through all of that. Harry defending Meghan early in their relationship did not feel casual. Even then, it was intense. Protective. Personal. In November 2016, he issued a rare public statement condemning the press treatment she was facing, calling out harassment and abuse in direct terms. That told people something important very early. He was not going to treat this relationship like a passing palace romance. That mattered. It mattered because it set the tone for everything that came after. From the start, this was not presented as light and easy. It was love under siege. Or at least that is how it came to feel. And when a relationship begins in defense mode, every later crack looks bigger. So when Harry spoke about home, about his children, about sadness instead of victory, many people heard something else beneath it. Not just frustration with security. Not just anger at the system. They heard a man looking back at the road that brought him here and wondering what it cost. That is the real pull of this story. not whether one more rumor is true, but whether, somewhere along the way, a prince who once believed love could save him ended up trapped inside a life he no longer fully recognizes. And if that sounds dramatic, remember this is a royal story. Drama is the wallpaper. Still, behind the titles and headlines, the emotional center is simple enough for anyone to understand. A son who feels cut off. A husband who still wants to protect. A father who cannot bring his children into the place that shaped him. That is not gossip. That is grief. And grief has a way of making old stories wake up again. Before the fights became global, before the interviews, the lawsuits, the podcasts, the documentaries, and the endless think pieces, there was a blind date. That part is real. Harry and Meghan both said they met through a mutual friend in 2016. They did not know much about each other, and Harry later said they fell in love so incredibly quickly. The speed of it became part of the legend. To romantics, it felt like fate. To skeptics, it felt like the start of a sprint that never slowed down. And honestly, you can see why people got pulled in. He was a prince with a bruised past, still carrying the shadow of Diana, still carrying that old public image of the wounded but lovable son. She was American, divorced, mixed race, camera-ready, confident, and very different from the women royal watchers thought would end up in that world. It looked fresh. It looked risky. It looked like the monarchy had opened a window. For a while, that was the feeling around them. Excitement. Surprise. Curiosity. Even people who did not care about royals cared about this. There was movement in the story. They were older, more sure of themselves, and not trying to pretend they were some shy teenage love match. Meghan later said that before the public found out, they had months where the relationship belonged only to them. You can almost feel how precious that must have seemed in hindsight. But almost from the start, the pressure showed up. Harry's 2016 statement defending Meghan from media abuse was not normal palace behavior. It was blunt, sharp, angry. He spoke about racism, sexism, harassment, and fear for her safety. That was one of the first signs that this relationship would not fit neatly inside the usual royal script. He was not just introducing a partner. He was drawing a line. That line told the public two things at once. First, he loved her fiercely. Second, he already felt the machine closing in. Then came the engagement interview, and for a moment, everything softened again. They looked relaxed, happy, slightly stunned by their own speed. Meghan said the proposal happened during a simple night at home, while they were making roast chicken. Harry said it felt like the stars were aligned. It was intimate, warm, and almost ordinary in the middle of all that grandeur. That ordinary detail mattered. Because royal stories survive on images, and this one gave people a lovely one, two people in a kitchen, laughing, saying yes before the sentence is even finished. It made the whole thing feel less like history and more like life. But once they married, the tone around them changed fast. That is where the pattern starts to show. Every new royal couple gets pressure, but this felt different. With Harry and Meghan, every gesture became a fight about meaning. If they wanted privacy, critics called it arrogance. If they spoke out, critics called it performance. If they followed tradition, people said it was fake. If they broke tradition, people said it was disrespect. That kind of atmosphere does something nasty. It makes normal choices look suspicious. And over time, it invites something even worse: invention. Accounts from journalists and commentators reveal how quickly online spaces filled with theories, edited clips, false timelines, and stories that fed on outrage more than proof. Some of the loudest claims around Meghan's pregnancies, for example, spread widely online, but no verified public evidence ever proved she used a surrogate. Even a fake supposed palace announcement about that was later debunked. Snopes that should have ended it. It did not. Because once people decide a person is a symbol instead of a person, they stop needing evidence. They start needing only mood. Suspicion becomes enough. Repetition becomes enough. And if a story is juicy enough, plenty of people will keep serving it long after the facts fail. The same thing happened with Harry for years. Rumors about his paternity followed him through adulthood, mostly because of red hair, public cruelty, and the world's hunger for royal scandal. But James Hewitt himself denied he was Harry's father, and the timeline makes the claim fall apart. Harry was born in 1984. Hewitt said he did not meet Diana until years later. BBC News still, that rumor lived on too. That is the warning sign in this whole story. Not just that Harry and Meghan became controversial. Royals always do. It is that they became containers for projection. People poured what they wanted into them. Hope, anger, race politics, class anxiety, family resentment, celebrity disgust, monarchy fatigue. And after enough years of that, even the smallest real moment gets buried under 10 fake ones. Then came the exit. In 2020, Harry and Meghan stepped back from royal duties and moved to North America. That was the point when the story stopped being a palace drama and became a permanent public war. To some, they were escaping. To others, they were abandoning duty. To still others, they were trying to survive a system that had already made up its mind about them. And ever since then, every new chapter has felt like an argument about the chapter before it. That is exhausting just to watch. Imagine living it. Then came the moment that pulled all the old tension back into view. Harry, older now, visibly worn, speaking not about revenge but about home, safety, and the life his children may never know firsthand. BBC News that was not a new beginning. It was the return of everything unfinished. On that particular occasion, there was no palace balcony, no royal parade, no carefully staged family photo to hide behind. Just Harry, in California, sitting with the consequences. He had lost his legal challenge over security in the UK. That was the immediate issue. But the interview that followed felt bigger than a court defeat. He spoke about family, about risk, about sadness, about not seeing a world where his wife and children could return to Britain safely under current conditions. And just like that, the old wound was open again. You could almost feel the public split in real time. Some people heard a son asking for peace. Some heard a prince still blaming everybody else. Some heard a husband trying, yet again, to defend the life he chose. And some heard something quieter than all of that, fatigue. Because this did not sound like the bright rebellion of the early years. It did not sound triumphant. It sounded worn down. Harry even said he would love reconciliation with his family. That is not the language of someone enjoying the fight. It is the language of someone tired of carrying it. That was the moment the story changed shape. Before, the public argument was often about whether Harry and Meghan had broken away too loudly. Now it felt more like watching what happens after the break, when freedom itself turns out to come with a bill nobody can stop paying. And right on cue, the noise rushed back in. Old stories were dragged out again. Old rumors got fresh thumbnails. Social media accounts pushed the same claims people had been recycling for years, especially the ones with the least proof and the biggest emotional charge. That is the ugly trick of public scandal. Facts get one day, rumor gets 10 lives. Some of those rumors centered on Meghan. Some on Harry. Some on the children. Some on the state of the marriage. And when stories get that personal, they stop being royal commentary and start becoming something harsher. A kind of feeding. That is the part that often gets missed. People talk about royal drama like it is weather, like it just happens. But these storms are made by people. Editors. Commentators. Online channels. Anonymous accounts. Bitter relatives. Opportunists. Whole little economies grow around one couple being permanently explainable and permanently suspicious. The fallout is not only public. It becomes emotional architecture. You begin to see it in Harry's posture, and the way every statement sounds like both an explanation and a defense. You see it in Meghan's silence too, because silence in stories like this is never treated as peace. It is treated as strategy, guilt, arrogance, calculation, collapse, all at once. That is a brutal way to live. And yet the weird thing is this: the less they say, the more other people say for them. When Harry said he missed the UK and felt sad about his children not knowing his homeland, that could have stood on its own as a deeply human line. Instead, it became fuel. Think pieces? Reaction videos. Arguments about whether he had the right to feel wounded. Arguments about whether his exile was self-made. Arguments about whether this was a message to his father, his brother, his critics, or Meghan herself. The public no longer just watches this couple. The public interprets them. That is a different level of exposure. And once the internet decides a marriage is symbolic, every expression becomes a clue. If Harry looks tired, it means something. If Meghan stays quiet, it means something. If they appear together, it means one thing. If they appear apart, it means another. Their real life disappears into a game strangers play for entertainment. That may be why the recent moment landed so hard. Not because it delivered a shocking new fact, but because it revealed something simpler and sadder than scandal. The cost. The cost of years spent in combat mode. The cost of trying to protect the person you love while also fighting the institution that raised you. The cost of becoming a story people enjoy more than they understand. And still, even with all that, the full truth was not some hidden explosive waiting in a vault. It was smaller than that. Sharper too. The truth was that the loudest claims were not always the strongest ones. Some of the most repeated stories had the weakest proof. Some of the hardest facts were the least flashy. And the biggest reveal was not a secret affair, a palace plot, or a dramatic confession. It was that a lot of this saga has been held together by rumor where evidence should have been. That is not less interesting. If anything, it is more disturbing. Because it means the crisis was never only inside the family. It was also in the way the world consumed them. So what really holds up when the noise drops? First, the relationship itself began in a way that is actually well documented. Harry and Meghan said they met on a blind date arranged by a mutual friend in 2016. Harry said he fell in love very quickly. That part is not rumor. That part came from them directly. Second, Harry did publicly move into protector mode early. His statement in 2016 defending Meghan from press abuse was real, and it showed how personal the media pressure already felt to him. That instinct to defend her did not appear later. It was there almost from the beginning. Third, his recent sadness about Britain is also real. He told the BBC he loved his country and felt it was really quite sad that he might not be able to show his children his homeland. Whatever side people take in the larger royal feud, that line is plain enough to understand. Now here is the other side, the part people often skip because it is less exciting. A lot of the most explosive claims that keep circling around this couple have never been publicly verified. That includes the long-running surrogacy conspiracy claims. They spread widely online. They generated endless commentary. But no verified public record has established that Meghan used a surrogate, and fake screenshots claiming a palace admission were debunked. That matters. Because repetition is not proof. And then there is the old paternity rumor around Harry, which has followed him unfairly for years. James Hewitt denied being Harry's father, and the timeline strongly undercuts the claim. Harry had already been born well before Hewitt said his relationship with Diana began. That matters too. Because some rumors stay alive not because they are strong, but because they are cruelly memorable. Once you put those pieces side by side, the whole picture becomes clearer. The verified story is already dramatic enough. A prince falls fast for a woman outside the old royal mold. He defends her fiercely. They marry into one of the most watched institutions on earth. The pressure grows. The trust breaks. They leave. The family split hardens. Years later, he is still talking about safety, exile, and home. You do not need fake extras added on top of that. The public reaction, though, tells its own story. Some people still see Harry and Meghan as proof that the monarchy cannot bend without punishing those who force change. Others see them as proof that grievance can become identity. Others are simply tired of the whole thing but cannot look away when a new crack appears. That is the strange power of royal drama. It makes people feel like they know a family they have never met. It also makes people deeply protective of the version they picked years ago. So when a new interview drops, when Harry sounds wounded again, when Meghan stays quiet again, the public does not really ask, "What happened?" It asks, "Which side does this confirm?" And that is why this story never settles. Not because there are no facts, but because facts are the part many people are least interested in. The aftermath is still unfolding. Harry says he wants reconciliation. The palace remains guarded. Meghan's public image continues to split opinion almost perfectly down the middle. Their children are growing up far from the rituals that once defined royal life. The institution moves on. The couple move on. Yet somehow the argument never does. In the end, the loudest thing in this story may be the gap between what was lived and what was said about it. That is the part worth sitting with. Because these stories provide insight into something bigger than one marriage or one royal feud. They show how fame can turn pain into content. How silence gets treated like guilt. How people will fill in blanks with fantasy if the truth does not arrive fast enough. And how, beneath all the titles and symbols, even the most watched people in the world can still sound heartbreakingly ordinary when they talk about home. That is why the line stayed with people. Not because it was flashy. Because it was human.